Hello there and welcome back. My name is Seth Juarez. This is Channel 9 and we are continuing this live celebration of Visual Studio being released on its birthday, more or less. This is the part of the program where it's all about you. And so please make sure to ask questions using the hashtag VS2017. Those are the most important things. If not, I'm going to ask whatever I want, okay? And I want you to ask the questions. We have some special guests here today. Why don't you introduce yourselves, my friends?
Well, good morning. My name is Julia Lewson. I'm the Corporate Vice President for Visual Studio and .NET.
And I'm John Montgomery. I'm the Director of Program Management for Visual Studio and .NET.
Awesome. So we'll do a little recap of some of the things we announced today. What are some of the favorite things that you found that you want people to really know about? We'll start with you, Julia.
Well, we just had such a long, 2-hour video of many of the key things. Obviously today, the start of the show is Visual Studio 2017. It's the general availability of our Star IDE. We're adding more productivity, we're adding more performance, we're improving fundamentals. It's really the best tool for mobile-first, cloud-first development. And together with VS 2017, we also have the latest update to Team Foundation Server 2017, which gives us fantastic DevOps capabilities together with VSTS. We have new previews coming in Visual Studio for Mac. We have new previews for Visual Studio Mobile Center. It's just a whole basket of greatness that's coming.
There seems it's pretty exciting too that, I've been around since, the first time I saw Visual Studio was in '98. And I was like a little tester that worked on really weird things, and I saw the devs, and I'm like, I want to work on that. So it's really cool. It's kind of exciting for me to be here too. Tell us about some of the exciting things that you saw in the keynote, John.
Oh boy, a couple of things. So the .NET Core 1.1 tooling, that's been baking for a while. It's great to have that done and ready. I love the productivity demos we came through, the live unit testing, the Control T, that go to all kind of experience that we have for code navigation, the performance improvements throughout the product, reduced working set, faster load time, faster solution load time. There's just a ton of stuff in the product. Honestly, I really could go on, in fact, for about 6 pages of blog post, which is exactly what I did today.
Awesome. But obviously this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. Tell us about the partnerships that we have with Visual Studio. I think we even have a slide that we're going to put up here behind so people can get a sense for that. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Visual Studio Partner Program. The partners in that program, we have well over 100 partners who have done the hard work with us and releasing the extensions, their new extensions for VS 2017 available right now, which is fantastic. And we have well over 700 extensions in our gallery marketplace for people to use with our latest release. So I want to thank those extension writers making these available for us as well. It's just together we're building a more powerful set of capabilities for our combined joint customers.
It must be quite an undertaking to work with 700 or 116 partners, 700 plus extensions to sim ship on the same day. That speaks to sort of the ecosystem a little bit, do you think?
Absolutely. And this particular time, we actually made pretty significant changes to the core infrastructure and installation experiences of Visual Studio 2017 to make more lighter weight. People probably noticed we have a very different installer experiences. And we actually allow 2 versions of VS 2017 to run side by side on your computer. And we do need the extension partners to write kind of differently to support our core architectural changes. And they have done a fantastic job supporting us and working with us to make that available.
Fantastic. What is it like working with partners for you, John?
It's great. So Visual Studio has had a healthy partner ecosystem pretty much for its entire life.
Correct.
And the partners we have, they're great. Like whatever we throw at them, they're right there, ready with us. Like yet again at launch, they all adapted to the changes Julia was just talking about. They brought their extensions up to date. They're just great partners to work with. And the truth of the matter is Visual Studio wouldn't succeed without all of these partners. Like the number of customers we have who install extensions and really they live and die by the extensions they install on top of Visual Studio, including a bunch of extensions from Microsoft, like the productivity power tools. It adds so much power to the IDE over kind of what it would be kind of right out of the box. And it is powerful out of the box.
That's right, and that's awesome. You were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to tell you a story about, I really want to just thank the Regate team. Not only they offer a bunch of fantastic value to our developers. In the last couple of months of us working very closely with them, we found that when their extension came in the very beginning, they impacted Visual Studio startup time performance. And then so as our team and their team worked very closely together, we actually made a product change on their side that actually they moved their the slow part of the installation of the startup actually to a background thread. And that really help preserve the startup experience for Visual Studio. So just again, thinking all of our partners has a lot of hardware kind of like that to make the overall experience much better in Visual Studio 2017.
I know you corrected yourself and you said our developers, but you said owners first. I feel like everyone that's used Visual Studio for the last 20, I feel like there's some ownership, right? Because there's amazing things that have been created over the years with Visual Studio, and so I'm happy to be, I feel like an owner a little bit. Thank you for that, for all your work.
Thank you for being a very loyal owner.
Yeah, by the way, I've done it for years. So a couple of things that I want to talk about. I saw something on Twitter that says, is there ever going to be a lightweight version of Visual Studio? Don't we have something like that already?
Yeah.
We like to think that's Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
And Visual Studio Code is a lightweight, super fast, cross-platform editor that we have introduced. It went GA about last April, Joe? And since then, we have already acquired more than 1.3 million monthly active users. We're seeing fantastic adoption and usage. Nearly 40% of the usage come from non-Windows systems. Mm-hmm. So we are really, for the developers who are looking for that super lightweight, just a little IntelliSense, maybe a lightweight debugging experience will do kind of user experience. VS Code really delivers on that mark.
Awesome. So when we talk about Visual Studio, it's more like a Visual Studio family. At Connect, we started to talk about it as a family. John, would you remind us of the products that are in there? I feel like if I remember right, there was 5 different things that were in the Visual Studio family.
Yeah, of course. There's the Visual Studio IDE itself, Visual Studio 2017. There's Visual Studio Team Services. And some of the newer additions, there's Visual Studio Mobile Center, Visual Studio Code, and
Visual Studio for Mac.
Visual Studio for Mac, that's right, the new edition. I just think of it as a member of the family, which actually had a preview update as well today.
Right.
And it's kind of cool because, my brother gave me a Mac from years ago, and I have Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio for Mac, and it runs, this is like a years ago Mac, and it runs just fine. It's kind of cool to be in the same familiar environment that I'm used to. So here's a question from Twitter. How fast is Visual Studio 2017 compared to older versions?
So depending on what you're doing, it can be anywhere from a few single-digit percentage faster up to 3-5 times faster. So for example, one of the demos we like to give, and you probably just saw in the video, was opening the Roslyn project, which is something in the neighborhood of 400 projects and 4 million lines of code, and then doing a quick navigation. So you do a go to all in it. It's about twice as fast loading it in Visual Studio 2017 versus Visual Studio 2015, and that includes the IDE startup and the navigation to the code point. So that's a pretty notable performance improvement, but pretty much everything is faster. Like if you're using C++, we improved the linker speed pretty notably, so you'll get performance improvements of kind of 10% up to 5x.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that if you we actually showed the Huawei video in the keynote previously. And I think we actually spent a good close to almost a year working with the Huawei team because they have such an enormous code base that's entirely in C++, and they're actually using the C++ code base to build for their Linux systems. And in the older version of Visual Studio, the project actually takes well over 40 minutes. That just kind of wouldn't quite finish loading. And I think that now, the spec we're actually getting is actually loading in minutes. So I think these are substantial improvements that we have.
And that's awesome. Because I remember talking to some of the PMs and some of the devs. There was this notion of budget when it came to performance. Why don't you tell us about that? Because I don't think people realize that you were literally accounting for the amount of seconds that ticked by. Why don't you tell us about that, John?
So yeah, actually, Julia mentioned it with, for example, even with our partners, with Redgate. When Redgate would load, it was inserting itself in the startup path. And we basically went to Redgate and we said, hey, you're slowing down startup. And so they had to move out of the startup path. And that was pretty much the case for every feature we added. If you added something that was going to add memory footprint or any kind of performance degradation in terms of load or compile or debug, you had to find a place to get that back. Mm-hmm. So basically, any place you added, you had to find a place to take away. So the Roslyn language service, for example, we crushed the memory way down on that. That requires maybe a quarter of the memory that it required before for most common solutions. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, then we added live unit testing. Right. So that takes a little bit of memory back. So it's kind of one of those things that whenever we added something, we needed to find a place to make it up.
Same thing in the debugging space,
Yep.
in the debuggers. We actually significantly reduced the amount of memory the debugger itself actually needed to load symbols and all of that, which allows obviously for more capabilities and memories for the application to be actually performing in a much better way.
I love it. A couple of questions. I heard something called the Enterprise DevOps Accelerator. What is that?
Well, I think that one of the key things that today when we realize, when we look at the developers, no one is really working as very few are working as an individual. Development is really a team sport. You have a development team. And increasingly, we're seeing that development team have some component being developed in a variety of different language and frameworks, etc. And commonly, we also see development teams are really trying to accelerate their delivery of the value to their customers. This is why you hear us talk a lot about a DevOps offer. And in all of that, some of the key capabilities that as a team that they really need is continuous integration, which allows multiple developers to kind of put their changes and capabilities together, and continuous deployment, which takes what is in the development branches and actually move that to the production branches, and in a continuous fashion. And our enterprise DevOps accelerator really takes all of the features that we have in VSTS and actually put it on top of our cloud backend and give you everything you actually need for a team to be productive in this one well-contained offer, and there's no additional cost for the team. We obviously also include our best development tools like Visual Studio Enterprise Edition in it. And for a team that is actually developing for the Microsoft kind of platforms, they also get a substantial discount for running SQL Server or Windows in Microsoft Azure as well. So altogether, it's a great package deal for a team who's really transforming to be a DevOps team. That's really, it doesn't matter, the teams can be working on multiple different languages at the same time, and it's about providing everything the team needs to enable them to deliver value to their customers.
I love the idea of delivering value. For me, it was about years ago. I'm dating myself now, people. It was about throwing exes over that people could just click on, right? But now software is much more complex. It's much more varied, and it's in a much more heterogeneous environment. I love how we're focusing on DevOps. What other things are we doing in the DevOps space with Visual Studio that's helping out? John?
There are a bunch of little things that are going on. Brian alluded to a bunch of them during the keynote that he was delivering. Donovan demoed a bunch of them. A couple of things that are particularly notable, Julia talked about them. We've tightened up the integration between Visual Studio and Visual Studio Team Services a lot. So your ability to easily configure everything from a Git repo and to get it off of your local system and up into the cloud and to start sharing that. That's now basically a mouse gesture. If you want to be able to do Dockerized deployments, that's again a right-click mouse gesture. If you want to be able to set that up for continuous delivery, we have an extension in preview right now actually that will configure VSTS seamlessly on the back end to be able to push that into Azure. So a bunch of places we're kind of smoothing that DevOps workflow through by deeply integrating the two tools together.
Let me actually add one more. Another key aspect of this is actually a variety of different services we have available in Azure, including like the App Insight services. Mm-hmm. And that's another key aspect of DevOps, because by integrating something like App Insight, you really can monitor what is going on at production time and have that data become available to developers during their planning and development phase. And that really enable much faster kind of, what we call the DevOps cycle.
Awesome. So it's all about your questions now. So please keep submitting your questions. From Ian Walker, will the Mac version ever have close parity to the Windows version of Visual Studio, I'm assuming?
So right now we focus the Mac version on really kind of the mobile-first, cloud-first workloads. Mm-hmm. So it contains things like .NET Core. It contains all of the Xamarin Mobile development. That's really the focus of what we're doing. It's kind of the new workloads as opposed to bringing some of the older workloads forward, although some of them are present because of the fact that Visual Studio for Mac runs on top of Mono and some of that comes in. But it's really more about the new workloads as opposed to kind of trying to go and add all the workload parity. And then on top of that, in terms of the feature parity, we have actually started a very ambitious engineering project to share code, a lot more code between those two things. So the Roslyn language service is in there. We've started to bring over the Salsa language service, which is the one we use for JavaScript. So and the web editor is coming over. So basically, a bunch of the functionality is coming over. So in fact, over the course of time, we will start to get those things closer and closer to functional parity. Whether they'll get all the way there, don't know, but the thing is we'll be very customer driven on kind of what we bring over from one to the other.
And at Connect, I remember talking to Miguel, and he was just absolutely floored with the amount of code sharing that you are able to do between the Mac version and the Windows version of Visual Studio, which is pretty cool. All right, next question. Is there an upgrade path from old CS Proj to the sleek new .NET Core style CS Proj?
No, not really. So when we made that decision, I will say the old style, that format, it was really optimized for one scenario, a web scenario. And what we found when we talked with customers was that was a that was kind of an edge case. Most of the customers we talked with had multiple different project types that needed to be integrated together, and that really called for us to rethink the project system again, and that was kind of a reset button we pushed over the course of the last really 9 months. That's now stabilized, but we're not trying to make it super easy to kind of bring all of those projects forward in some automated fashion. You'll have to move them manually.
Yeah, I will say two things. One is that when we talk to the .NET developers, one of the huge value of having Xamarin and Unity and .NET Core and ASP.NET, all of the cloud and server development is co-sharing. Our developers really want to go, there's a lot of business logic, you only have to go write it kind of once and then integrate, as John said, into the variety of different sort of Xamarin projects or Unity projects or your backend ASP.NET or ASP.NET Core project. And that co-sharing really is enabled now with the new CS project, with the current CS project format.
Sure.
It just allows that co-sharing. And so another thing that we do understand that in the previous case of .NET Core, the project format we had, we are very willing to help developers move forward. So if they're running into challenges in moving their previous project forward, just send us an email, and then we'll be very happy to help you out.
I know there's an automated, because I have a .NET Standard project that I write, and when I opened it up in a new version, it said, oh, it looks like you need to change it, and it actually migrated everything over quite nicely,
Yeah.
and there's a command line tool for that for .NET Core projects.
Yeah.
That'll work. The challenge you wind up with is if you've done any customizations on top of that, those tools they're designed for the simple case. And what we found when we talked, especially with our MVPs, most of them had gone deep in and done deep customizations, and then at that point, the tool just kind of doesn't work super well. I want to make sure I'm not over-promising.
Sure.
I will under-promise and over-deliver.
Yeah, I guess I write simple code, ladies and gents, and so it worked for me. A couple more questions. Are there going to be any more Visual Studio 2015 updates?
No.
No.
Okay, so now it's 2017, because I feel like it's changed enough that, I mean, I love Net Standard. I love the idea of what .NET is doing. I love the idea of where the ecosystem is going, and so, okay. Next question, are you planning, we read that one. What's new, this is the one I wanted, from Khaled. What's new with web development in Cordova on VS 2017?
Go ahead.
Well, I think that with web development, we actually are, we have a ASP.NET Core is really the core capabilities we have added for our web development, plus additional, I think, CSS. We have a new JavaScript, IntelliSense, in there. We're actually working on a set of updates that will really significantly improve the debugging and diagnostic capabilities for web developers, particularly targeting Azure. So there's a lot of stuff in there and coming very rapidly. And I think on the Cordova development, I think that the focus has been continuing the track, the deliverables that we had in VS 2015. And I think there was additional integration that's really enabled by the Visual Studio Mobile Center.
There were a couple of things in the product that we did change. We gotten a bunch of feedback about the performance of the inner loop, the debug, so when you hit F5 or hit Control F4. And that was slow, and so we've improved the performance of that a lot. The other thing is, of course, we keep pace with the Cordova platform, but most of our mobile energy right now is going much more toward the C# Xamarin as opposed to the Cordova path.
Fantastic. A question about DevOps. DevOps mainly focuses on VS 2017 Enterprise. How about the Pro version? Could I use DevOps in VS Pro as well?
Yeah.
DevOps is a methodology. We really talk about DevOps as it's really the integration of people, process, and product that enables a team to work in a particular way. So absolutely, I think the DevOps, that's the capability that's enabled by VSTS. You can actually use it from VS Pro. You can use it from Eclipse. We have Eclipse plugins. We have IntelliJ plugins. So that capability is absolutely available to developers on all languages and platforms.
Fantastic. So Visual Studio 2017 is out today. Can anyone get it? It's available for everybody?
Go to www.visualstudio.com, and there's a link right there to download it.
Fantastic.
There's a community version, which is free, and then there are trials of Pro and Enterprise for anybody.
Tell us a little bit more about the community edition. Is it like a hampered version, or is it like something you can actually use?
It is basically the same as Visual Studio Professional with a different license. And the license basically says, use it for open source projects, use it for professional projects if you're, I think, teams of under 5. And things like that, but by and large, it's exactly the same as Visual Studio Professional.
And that's awesome, because I mean, anyone can use that. How many people do you remember the numbers? Because the numbers were something ridiculous, like millions of people using the Community Edition already.
Yeah, I think that our monthly users of communities is in the millions for sure already for VS 2015. And just to add to John's point, I think that not only we really want to enable open source development, we also have a great program with education institution where all of the students can get our product for free. And I think that for a company, for a startup, for a company that's less than a particular size of revenue and the size of development team, that's what the VS community is really designed for.
I think it's $1 million.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, it's amazing. Here's some more questions coming in. Why is Visual Studio still 32-bit, and what are you doing to improve memory management?
So there are a couple of things here. The first thing we've done, just to talk about what we have done, the biggest move in Visual Studio 2017 was to push a whole bunch of things out of the core process. So Roslyn, the language services moved out, a bunch of the debugging moved out, a bunch of basically the capabilities that would kind of impinge upon that 32-bit process moved out of proc. And for most customers, that's proven to be the single biggest memory win they can get. The conversation about 64-bit is this, it's a question that comes up very often because you wave the magic wand of 64-bit and of course everything gets better. There is a challenge. You do get a bunch more address space to be able to talk to. One of the interesting characteristics that we see with both the projects and the solutions that are loaded into Visual Studio is a lot of them are using relatively short memory address spaces. The pointers are 8-bit pointers. And what happens when you flip over to a 64-bit address space is you have much, much longer words.
Right.
And so the garbage collector basically has to work that much harder. And so you get a performance hit whenever the garbage collector needs to run. So one of the things we have to be very, very thoughtful about is the performance degradation you see from memory compression. So the fact that there are so many things running in process,
Sure.
which we think we've addressed a lot of it by moving things out of proc, versus the performance hit you'll get in a garbage collected environment when you have basically short allocations that are taking up a lot of memory, and the garbage collector has to work that much harder. That performance overhead, we did some analysis internally a while ago, it can be 10 to 20%.
Wow.
So before we go to a 64-bit thing, we really want to see if moving things out of process is going to clear things up.
And that's interesting because I mean, with 64 bits, you have that much more memory that you can allocate, which means you have that much more memory that you need to collect. It's an interesting problem. That's awesome. Another question, is live unit testing going to be available in Visual Studio Community Edition?
No, it is in Enterprise.
Okay, awesome. So we have about 2 minutes left, 2 or 3 minutes left. Tell us, what do you want people to be doing with Visual Studio? What are some of the exciting future things that people can be working on that you are excited about that Visual Studio enables? We'll start with you, John.
Probably the favorite thing that I love to play with and to do stuff with right now is .NET Core running on Linux in a Docker container with a full CI/CD pipeline into VSTS. To me, that's like this magic that occurred between Visual Studio 2015 and Visual Studio 2017. It also kind of represents a pretty major change in kind of even how Microsoft thinks about the software that we ask people to create.
And what about you, Julia?
Well, I will say recently I've been working with my team on some more future-looking things like AI and bots, and just watching the teams giving me demos about building bot interaction on top of the Microsoft Cognitive Services, the LUIS framework, and the code is entirely in ASP.NET, running in the container, etc. I think that is just really shows what can be done with VS 2017 for all of the possible scenarios that's coming.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with us. We have a couple of other questions that we're going to make sure to answer to you folks on Twitter. But before we go to the next guest, I had the privilege of talking to two developers, Dave and Benjamin Johnson, who are a father-son team. I got to have them in the studio earlier to talk about how Visual Studio has changed what they're doing. I have a short 2-minute clip to give you a teaser. You can look at the full one and all of the videos that are released today. By the way, the question's always asked, are these going to be available later for recording, on Channel 9? The answer is absolutely yes. So let's cue that up, Golnaz, and let's roll that tape.
My name is Dave Johnson. I'm a software developer from San Diego.
Fantastic.
And I'm Benjamin Johnson. I'm a junior in high school, and I'm also from San Diego.
Are there any future projects that you're thinking about doing?
Yeah, actually, one of the projects that I'm going to be doing now is using a Xamarin application that I can deploy to my parents' Android phones. And what I want to do is have actually some wearable sensors for my brother, because well, he's 7 years old, and he unfortunately has seizures every few months, and a lot of times it happens while he's sleeping or while he's not around people per se. So it'd be nice to have a notification that he is having it, so my parents can be there to help him. And so the architecture I'm sort of thinking about right now is having the wearable sensors that would pump data up to, say, like an Azure IoT hub, and then use Xamarin to have that data come down to my parents' phones.
That's amazing. I mean, and you can also maybe throw in some machine learning to predict when this actually might even happen in the future.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, hey, there's something might happen in a couple of
good,
minutes.
yeah.
That's awesome. And so, as with all programmers, we're always asked this: when is this going to be ready so we can take a look at it?
Yeah, well, I'm working on it as my next project. I'm not sure when it's going to be done, but it's going to be done. It'll be done sometime.
This is exactly what programmers say. I'm so proud. Did you teach him that, or did he just come up with that himself?
He just learned well.
It's coming out soon, ladies and gents. It's going to be great. And no joking around, this is absolutely an amazing piece of software that needs to be out there. I mean, I imagine it can help a lot of people.